Rooster Teeth is alive in 2025, and I never thought that I would say that. This has been like the weirdest morning of my life. I'm sure a lot of you guys are feeling that way too, and we are going to cover all of it. I'm going to cover what we have right now, but then also generally my thoughts on it. Speaking of things that are alive, by the way, I'm alive. I'm not dead. I'm still here. I just have another main channel now, and if you guys are interested, it's sort of like imagine if Shay Frellis sideways and then like me, like Calxiyn had a baby. That's what the channel is about. It's about animated musicals and that sort of thing, song analysis, but then also like video essays and that sort of stuff. If you're more interested in knowing how companies are, failing compared to how they are being revived, I do have a video essay about the downfall of the Disney movie musical and how they are, it's kind of like an expose about how they are allegedly treating their songwriters behind the scenes, which is not apparently very well. And so yeah, that's what I've been doing. If you're wondering about Hunter's in Cuba, so lucky her, I guess, but we will reconvene on Monday, which is when we are apparently supposed to get some more information. But in terms of the information that we do have now, let's go over the facts first, and then we will talk about like the good and the bad. Burnie has acquired the Rooster Teeth IP. So not the company, because there is no company anymore, right? Like, to have a company, you need buildings and employees, right? Like, none of that, the company shut down. And so what he has is the IP, and then stuff that was like retained by the Rooster Teeth IP, to my understanding. Because listen, guys, okay, I have a degree in professional communications and musical theater. I can write you a song or a social media post, but I am not like into all of the business side of things, right? But it's my understanding that to be a company, you need company things, right? And there is no company things. There is just the branding of Rooster Teeth, if you want to call it that, and the other things that were underneath it that did not get pawned off to other people, right? With that in mind, we'll probably also talk about RWBY in a little bit, because everybody's asking, like, what about RWBY? Because RWBY has been acquired by Viz. We will get there. But Burnie has acquired, obviously, the IP. They're planning to bring some stuff back. He has said in the podcast that he has with his wife, if you guys don't know, which pre-existed before this point, but they made a podcast about this specific news today, that he wants to get content out by summer 2025, which seems a little soon, but it really depends on what they're doing, and there's some mixed feelings about this entire situation, and you may be wondering, like, why? Isn't this what everyone wanted? Like, Rooster Teeth to go back to its roots, not to be acquired by, like, a big company anymore, but to, like, be in the hands of the people that built it up? And, like, yes, but I'll talk about that, right? Because it's a little more complicated. Just to get into, okay, well, what does Rooster Teeth have? Red vs. Blue, Camp, and the Rooster Teeth podcast are all on the website. Obviously, there are some other things too, some stragglers that did not get acquired off, but some things did and were retained by the people that made them, Achievement Hunter. And so I don't have a full list in front of me because they didn't give one of everything that Rooster Teeth still has, as opposed to Warner or another company. But Camp, Red vs. Blue, and the podcast is on the website. In terms of what content we can expect, this is one of those things that we get into the positives and the negatives. What I will say though is that I think a net positive, no matter how you feel about Burnie or Rooster Teeth or whatever, is that I'm glad that the IP has been acquired by someone that actually, founded the company, as opposed to some random company that would be like, yeah, we don't really care about this, like the Rooster Teeth YouTube channel, just shut it down. If there is one good thing out of this, it is that Rooster Teeth's IP has been acquired so that things that were, kind of forgotten and not as popular as RWBY, but were still hosted by Rooster Teeth and people still are available to people. No matter, Camp, right? Things that were kind of in a nebulous zone, those things can still be distributed on YouTube and that sort of thing. And so we know that those things will be available to watch. They won't just become lost media. I thought that that was a very good point that someone brought up that I personally didn't think of. But yeah, if there's one good thing about this, it is that the things, and even just the YouTube videos, right? YouTube videos that are at least we won't lose those things. It's very possible that one day Warner could have just been we don't really care about this, shut it down. We don't want someone to manage this, right? So it's good that it's safe, at least. The content that existed before is safe. To briefly talk about RWBY though, I think that it is a good thing that things have happened the way that they have happened, because a lot of people are gonna wonder, like, well, what about RWBY, right? Like, RWBY was sent off to Viz, like, can they buy it back? No, Rooster Teeth was never equipped to give RWBY the attention that it needed. I don't know if they just didn't want to, or like, they just didn't have the bandwidth, I don't know. Personally, like, my belief is that Rooster Teeth just spread themselves too thin, and that the animation stuff wasn't really what they were interested in. Like, when Monty was around, it was kind of like, okay, Monty, go do whatever you want, right? But like, they were more interested, from my perspective, in the live action stuff. And obviously, over the years, we have heard that from like anonymous employees and that sort of thing, that allegedly, like, that was sort of, you know, the mindset was animation was treated like a second-class citizen, the department, I guess I should say. But yeah, so I think that this is a good thing that Viz has it, because Rooster Teeth was never equipped to handle it. And I don't even mean like the animation like budget or whatever. I mean like merchandising and opportunities and collaborations with other IP holders and stuff, like video games, and you know what I mean? Like, anybody remember Vicious Circle, how well that went? Like, obviously there were some RWBY games and some RWBY collaborations, but it never seemed like front of mind, and it never seemed like Rooster Teeth was actually working with, you know, big IP holders that could have actually done something, you know what I mean? But I think that Viz is better equipped to handle it. I don't think that Rooster Teeth ever was, and RWBY has a lot of potential as an IP by a company that's sole focus obviously is not on RWBY, but is on like anime and like that sort of stuff, like Viz is anime, manga, the stuff that RWBY actually fits in the pocket into, even like video games, right? Whereas Rooster Teeth has like personalities and gaming content and live action and movies. Like, it's just too much, not enough focus in, whereas Viz is a lot more focused. Now, what I could see happening, maybe, snowball's chance in hell, is that by my logic, okay, if they're really serious about bringing Red versus Blue back, which I'm like, please just let it die. Like, let it go, bestie. That's one of the things that Hunter texted me this morning. Like, let it go. But whatever. If they are serious about bringing back Red versus Blue, they're gonna need animators. I don't know whether they'll decide to do that in-house or not, but what I could see happening, maybe, not anytime soon, but like 2027, when Viz has already, if you guys don't know, Hunter and I have like theorized that what Viz is going to do is make like RWBY continuations, like in the form of manga or books, generate a profit off of that and merch, and then like look at like, okay, we're gonna make volume 10 now, after like the mangas and the books and the merch and the puzzles or whatever have already been successful. That's Hunter and I's theory right now. What could happen in like 2027 is that Rooster Teeth has an animation department again, and so they are contracted by Viz for the animation, but then Viz handles stuff like the merchandising and like the distribution and all of that stuff. In this like theoretical zone where they both work together, it's definitely better to work together than like, oh, you know, people's delusions about Rooster Teeth reacquiring RWBY from Viz. I don't think that that's a good idea. I am glad that RWBY got acquired. I do not want RWBY to go back to Rooster Teeth. Now again, if they are like genuinely going to have their own animation department, maybe Rooster Teeth would handle the animation, but like, I don't know. It's just a thought. In terms of the content they will actually make though, this is my 2 cents on it. Again, as a YouTuber, as someone that knows a lot about Rooster Teeth, right? I can't say whether or not they'll actually do this, or if this is just like, this is what they should do, right? But you know, those things have overlap, right? So from my perspective, YouTube is kind of having like a renaissance almost right now of like old style YouTube content. Like, if you look at your recommendeds, I don't know about you guys, but I get a lot of like, you know, do the thing, your time is now, or like, it really is that damn phone, or why YouTube feels different now, and it's just people talking. You know what I mean? It's not this like high budget, like Mr. Beast, like 5 cuts per second or whatever, like editing, you know, bullshit. It is just people talking about their feelings about certain things. And I don't just mean like commentary videos, because obviously you have your, you know, D'Angelo Wallaces and all of that stuff, and Moist Critical, like those commentary people have always existed, but I'm just talking about like lay people talking about things at the camera, and it's like not that serious. That is making a resurgence, and I have 2 theories about why. First of all, we are kind of sick of like TikTok overly edited, like brain rot kind of content. Again, the Mr. Beast type stuff. Like, it's our generation's age that is sick of that sort of thing. at the same time, it's our generation's age who is nostalgic for things like Markiplier and the Yogscast and Rooster Teeth, right? So they're coming in at a very good time, right, where people are craving more authentic and like less highly edited content, and are also nostalgic for what they used to have. So I think it would be smart for them to start small and just be like, it's us on the podcast shooting the shit. It's us trying out like a new silly game or something, right? That is what makes the most sense to me, is not to like, scale up super quickly. Now, I know that they did talk about a film, but the difference is between like now and like, I guess, old Rooster Teeth that were acquired by someone, is that like now I'm like, if Burnie wants to remake his film, it's his money, I guess. Like, I don't really give a fuck, right? Like, you know what I mean? But I'm saying that outside of those things which are sort of, clearly, I don't want to say vanity projects, because that's not exactly the right word, but it probably overlaps, right? Like, the ultimate arrogance of a YouTuber is thinking that someone will listen to you, and so you have to have a little bit of full of yourselfness. But like, yeah, so if Burnie wants to like remake his movie, it's his money. Oh yeah, so a lot of people are asking like, who's funding this? I don't know if you guys know this, but Burnie like got in kind of on the ground floor with like Bitcoin and made a lot of money. They never talked about how much money, but I'm assuming like that in combination with like selling Rooster Teeth in the first place and stuff, like he's not a billionaire, but he has money lying around. And so at this point I'm like, well, it's your money, right? And they don't have RWBY anymore. If they had RWBY, I'd be like, you have to be responsible, right, with reallocating the funds and the budget and but it's his, whatever. He can do whatever he wants. Burnie can chase Hollywood all he wants now. It's his money. I don't care. I do remember a long time ago there were like kind of whisperings that like Rooster Teeth was like chasing after Hollywood, and that's why they wanted stuff like Day 5 and like whatever, right? And so, but I think outside of that, it would be smart, and what people want is just like old style Rooster Teeth content. And so when they say, oh, we're gonna have content by summer 2025, and we're like, well, how the fuck, right? I don't think it's gonna be like camp, you know what I mean? I think that because that's gonna take more time, I think it's gonna be more low-key stuff. At least that's what I'm hoping, right? Because it would be really sad to have this revival only to run it into the ground like you did the first time, and now I'm sure he's smarter not to let like the company get acquired again and all of that stuff. But a lot of Rooster Teeth's failings were how big they scaled so quickly, and then all of the other hands in the pot, I guess you could say, all the other cooks in the kitchen that had their own corporate interest, right? Because that's what always ruins everything, is the corporate interest. Even in the Disney video I already mentioned earlier, like it's the same sort of situation, right? And so I can only hope that they're all smarter this time with what they're doing. So like, that's the good. I think that's what I was doing first, right? Maybe they have learned from the things that have happened in the past, and that we will get some like good content, right? Like some old school Rooster Teeth type content. Like the worst scenario is that we get a bunch of movies that like nobody asked for. But I do think that based on what they have, like it just makes sense to do like the podcast and the gaming and the whatever, right? Like kind of a low stakes thing. So to talk about the bad, you guys may be wondering like, Cal, why are you giving this the side eye? Isn't it a good thing? Like, is it not what we want to have the people that founded the things that we love to retain those things, like without corporate meddling and like other interests and what have you? And like, yes, but there's also just something that I can't really shake. And I don't want to make videos about this sort of stuff anymore. Like not like news. I'm talking about like Rooster Teeth scandals. Any scandals, really. Even that Disney video I made, it was supposed to be like a fun little video. It was based on a tweet that was like, oh, like what was the downfall of the Disney movie musical? You can pinpoint the exact moment that it happened, but then everyone had different answers. So I was just gonna do a fun little commentary video on what I thought the actual answer is, and then I guess I just have a knack for uncovering bullshit and nonsense because I found bullshit and nonsense, and it turned into like an expose. I just don't want to do that sort of stuff anymore. I like my people fictional, I guess. I don't want to like mess with that. And that's another reason why I think that I'm most equipped to speak on this, because I was not foaming at the mouth for Rooster Teeth to have a downfall or to shut down like some other YouTubers are, right? But I also wasn't parasocial with like Burnie and Gus and Gavin or whatever. Like I mostly cared about RWBY. I've never really cared about like real people like that, like celebrities, pop stars, whatever. I've never been that sort of person. I didn't have like a One Direction poster in my room as a kid or any of that stuff. I never, like, idolized any celebrities, like, even influencers, content creators. Maybe it was because I was one at such an early age that I kind of, like, I knew better. I don't know. But I say all of that because, you know, Hunter and I were children when we were reporting on Rooster Teeth scandals. Like, we were teenagers. And so I believe everything that we have ever said to be true to the best of my knowledge. Like, I thought it was true. That's why I made the videos on it. However, there is something to say about how throughout Rooster Teeth's various scandals, a lot of the heat went towards the villain of the week. And obviously that was justified for the villain of the week to take the heat. However, I feel like what kind of escaped was the responsibility of, like, Matt and Burnie and the people at the top of all of this, right? Because as much as the villains of the week were villaining, I suppose you could say, right? I feel like that they kind of got away with a little too much, you know, or they got cut a little too much slack. And now from Hunter and I's perspective, it's not our fault because we could only deal with the information that we were given, and in a lot of the stories that we got, like, Burnie and Matt were kind of like side characters. Nobody really talked about them in depth. However, as the years have gone on and, like, more employees have spoken out about different things, I feel like that there's definitely more to the things that went on, if that makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? There's definitely more that was going on at those times, and it was just about who was likable enough to kind of get away with it and who wasn't, and who was thrown under the bus and who wasn't. And obviously, like I said, I can't stress this enough, I do think that the people that were caught and were the main character of the scandals, you know, and all of the alleged things that they did were still bad. Like, they were still bad people, but whether it was out of ignorance or just incompetence, the people at the top still let those things go on, and Burnie was still one of them, right? And so as much as, like, this is interesting to me, and I'm definitely interested, trust is not automatically given, especially not by me anymore. I'm, like, kind of jaded and a little cynical now, like, just in general, right? Like, I'm 25 now, I'm a little jaded and cynical more than I was as a teenager, but, like, you know, that Disney video I made, it broke my heart a little bit, because obviously, like, we know that, like, Disney has a myriad of problems, right? Like, with paying people a living wage and crunch and, like, all of this other stuff, but there's a difference between, like, problems within a system, right? Like, say, crunch happening because of, like, unrealistic deadlines and stuff, and obviously that is still bad. It is a toxic work environment to be in, but there's a difference between, like, just the system is broken, the way of working is broken, and then, like, person to person level and, like, the treatment that the songwriters are being put through and artists being treated like machines and not storytellers. And that, like, just kind of shook me up a little bit. We're accustomed to knowing that there's problems within a system in, like, animation, but we generally expect the people that, you know, saved Disney from bankruptcy to be treated a little better and a bit more respectfully. Like, I think in our minds the respect is usually reserved for, like, directors, on-screen talent, and, like, you know, personalities that the public knows. And the public knows these people, like, say, Alan Menken, for example. The public knows him, right? And I think would be outraged if the general public was more aware of the stuff I found in that video, which a lot of people are not. So to bring it back to Rooster Teeth, because obviously that's Disney, it's different. It's just so you guys understand where I'm coming from. Like, I'm coming from a position of, like, but I don't trust you, right? Maybe the hardcore Rooster Teeth fans do, and they just forgot everything that happened and they're just willing to forgive or whatever. But I remember things that we heard at that time. I remember things that were said, like, you know, and so I just am looking at this like, trust is not freely given, at least not by me anymore. Trust is earned. And so they're gonna have to do a lot to prove to me that the things that happened in the past, right? The crunch, the racism, the transphobia, all of those allegations and those things that happened are not going to happen again. And I don't have this blind optimism that it's not going to happen just because Rooster Teeth isn't owned by a company anymore. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? There is one more thing I want to address before we log off, and there's a bit of like, I don't even want to call it a rumor because it's not a rumor. It's like a delusion going on right now that like, oh, Cal and Hunter were sued by Rooster Teeth and we were silenced personally by so-and-so. That never happened. I just don't want to talk about this stuff anymore. We were teenagers receiving all of this information from, you know, people that we like cared about the well-beings of, like the employees that worked on stuff like RWBY and Genlock and whatever. Like, we were receiving that as kids, and it was a very heavy burden on us. We were never like sued. We were never silenced by anyone. We just, you know, it was just too much for us to deal with, and we were not equipped to deal with it. That should be like the journalist's job, you know what I mean? It should have never been our job or our responsibility, and as an adult I realize that now, and I'm not gonna put it on myself to be responsible for those sorts of things. And so no, we were never silenced. It's time to move on, right? RWBY is not at Rooster Teeth anymore, and so the things that happened with RWBY's production, like RWBY is getting a fresh start. It's time for all of us to have one. I know that that seems counterintuitive to the idea of like, oh, but Rooster Teeth is being resurrected, but like, we can only hope that it's not going to be resurrected by the same problems, and if it is, I'm just not gonna support them, because it's not like that, you know, they don't have anything that I want anyway. They don't have RWBY anymore, and so there is no like big fight to fight. You know, if people know the stuff that happened, and if they choose to like support Burnie anyway because they chalk the stuff that happened up to like other individuals or to being bought out or whatever, like that's everyone's individual choice. You know, I don't need to run some sort of like boycott or something like that. We're all gonna make our own decisions. We're all gonna see with our own eyes where this goes. I think I covered everything that I want to talk about. Like, I talked about RWBY, I talked about what content that they're going to make, I talked about why I'm not like, you know, super excited. I guess I have a kind of middle opinion of everything. I guess the last thing that I'll say is like, I can't stress enough how I hope at least that Rooster Teeth will be better managed this time, and that they do need to learn from their mistakes. Because something that always struck me was like, Rooster Teeth was the first to be there, but they were also the last ones to leave. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? And so like, for example, Rooster Teeth had what is considered as like the first Western VTubers. The RWBY VTuber and the Yang VTuber that were at RTX are like the first Western VTubers, and they did like nothing with it. They did not have a pulse on like the trends of Japanese VTubing. Like, now we have HoloLive and Niji Sanji and all of that stuff. They were not there, and then by the time they got there, and by the time they finally got their like RWBY VTuber up, it was kind of at a weird place like during the hiatus, and now the RWBY VTuber is gone. So that's what I mean. Like, stop spreading themselves so thin and jump on opportunities as they are like hot, basically, right? Like, I don't want movies and like all of this sort of stuff. I want them to actually kind of innovate like they used to. But the problem is that they always like innovate a little bit and then they give up to chase Hollywood and chase the mainstream attention. But in chasing the mainstream attention, you forget about your fans. And so like, if Burnie could hear me directly right now, that's what I would tell him. I would also tell him, hey, can I have a job? Because, you know, I kind of need one. I applied for the social media manager position, you know, a couple times. I never heard anything back. Oh, I wonder why. I just want to impart that I think that success will be found in truly remembering the roots of the company, if that's what they're going to do. And the roots of the company were not in making like big budget Hollywood movies. It was about the authenticity of the talents' relationships with each other, and that's what needs to be brought back. And that is actually, again, something that is trending right now. So use it, or I guess lose it, because again, it would be really sad if after all of this fanfare, Rooster Teeth just ends up in the exact same position that it did again. So I think that's everything I have to say. Like I said, Hunter and I will make a video when the Q&A happens and we get some more information. So if you want to find me a bit more regularly, I mean, I'm going to get back into reaction content again. I'll probably talk about that on like Twitter and stuff. I'm getting back into gaming content. I have a VOD channel now, and that's where all my gaming content that I don't edit is going to live. And so if you're interested in just like hanging out with me live, that's where you'll find me on the VOD channel, or again, the musical theater channel, the Calxiyn Cares Too Much channel. And so So thank you for attending Calxiyn's Royal Court. I had to think about what the outro, because I say this has been Calxiyn caring way too much, and I guess that also applies here. I'm probably the only one that's gonna care this much about this. And so I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!